Today we hear of the call of Levi, or as we commonly know him as Saint Matthew. Now it might be a moment to think about Caravaggio's very beautiful painting of the call of Matthew, which can be found here in the French church in Rome. But I'd like to think more about, perhaps reflect on the Matthew's own thoughts about his call, his vocation, perhaps many years after he had been there. I think, in some way it's all hypothetical because we don't know much about Matthew's life. He's said to have gone to Ethiopia or Persia to evangelize, but other than that, very little is known about him. But you wonder, and it's probably very easy to think, that several years after he was called to become an apostle, a disciple of God himself, Matthew would have probably looked back and thought, what happened? There I was sitting at this desk counting my money, trying to get people to pay their taxes, whatever it might be. And then suddenly this man comes and for some reason I follow him, and my whole life changes. Everything is changed from that moment. And now here I am traveling the world preaching that man who called me was no ordinary man, but was God. Matthew, his whole life changes in that moment that Jesus says, "Follow me." And I think it's beautiful to think about because in some way, many of us who have chosen to follow the Lord, sometimes when we look back, many years back, it's very difficult to recognize sometimes what it is that drew us to him, what it is that maybe called us to become deacons, priests, religious, whatever it might be. Sometimes there's initial attraction to some aspect of the religious life, of the life of faith. And then as you travel along the path of faith, as you become more immersed in the things of the church, little by little you find that you are no longer who you were. You're a completely new person. You're a new creation. And it's amazing to think what God has done with that life, with our lives. And so this moment of the call of Matthew, I think, is a beautiful time to think about that, to think about in my own life. There's certain moments in which God has worked more gracefully, more fully, more, you could even say, palpably. And when I think of those moments, and I look at myself now, how have I changed? How have I followed the call of the Lord? How has it made me in some way someone completely unexpected? Someone entirely grace-filled, even if there are moments of sin along the way, even if there are moments in which we haven't cooperated the best with the Lord, there are still ways in which we can look at our lives and see how God has really worked in spite of us to bring us to where we are. So this reflection on our vocation, on who we are, what we have become, is in some way a moment to thank God for everything that he has done in our lives, as Matthew might have done. That tax collector, his whole life could have been spent at that desk, counting money. But God came, God called him, he followed the Lord, and his whole life changed. Let us thank God then for whatever vocation we have, how he has worked through that vocation to make us today who we are. Let us ask him for the grace also that tomorrow we might become even more of what he wants us to be.